let's see. This is processing the actual socket. Some notes. And this is where we do a bunch of things. We handle this keep alives, right? So HTTP keep alives will be done right there. Sorry to pull out my notes, guys. It's not dead. You see we've got input and output buffers handled right here. Some timeouts are handled here. And then we have processing the actual request header, right? If you've ever used Telnet or something to actually do a GET request, that first line is that request header, right? There. So this is where you're going to start processing that request, that action, right? So if it's a GET request, it's going to process that here into this input buffer. Set some start times, handle all that low-level stuff, and then it does this parse headers. So it parses the HTTP headers right there again. Catches some errors. Where are we at? We are currently at this line where we're servicing the request. So we've done all this stuff already. We parsed the HTTP headers. If it's, let's see, if timeouts are disabled or some extra code in here to handle that stuff. The next point we go into is this uses a Coyote adapter to service this request. Say it's a GET request. It processes the headers and then hands it off to this Coyote adapter to service that request, right? And that's where we're at in this next line. And here we start to see some really interesting things. This is where we start to see our requested response objects start to kind of form. You know, we're all the way in the servlet usually when we're writing our code. You're dealing with HTTP servlet requests and servlet responses, right? So this is where they're starting to be built up. So this Coyote adapter is going to take a request and response and create them, set some encoding on them, and then there's this little X powered by header. So this is where the server identifies itself by, you know, this server is powered by Tomcat. So if you have security requirements that tell you not to identify what server you're coming from, this will be the header of this place where you can configure whether or not to show that. And there's some more stuff that, you know, determine if the request is a comment request. And it does some more parsing of the verbs. If it's a comment request, it does this thing. If it's not a comment request, and if it's a post request, it does some stuff here. We're in request parse processor. So this is where we're at currently right now. We're already in our controller, broken right there. We're going to get this container, the pipeline, we get the first one, and we're going to invoke it. So we're in this Coyote adapter, and we're now invoking this pipeline. So the pipeline that we're invoking is the Tomcat valves, right? So has anyone configured a Tomcat valve before? You know, down at server XML, or in the Tomcat configs, it's a pluggable valve system. So you can plug a number of different valves, handle errors or filter, do security at this high level, or a bunch of different things. So these are the valves we're going to look at, and these are the built-in ones that's just stock Tomcat. So the standard engine valve, the error reporter valve, the standard host value, the standard context value, and the standard wrapper. So we'll get into in live code what these do in just a minute. So this standard engine valve, it just does one thing. That's all these valves do. They just check one thing and then move on to the next thing in the pipeline. So these are just fail safes, if you want to think of it that way. So this, can you see that? This gets the actual host from the request. So if you requested, Google.com, the host would be, Google.com or www.google.com. So if the host is null, so if there wasn't any host on that first request line, then it's going to trigger an error, and then it's going to stop processing in that request, right? So that's all this little valve does, is just make sure there's a host header. That's it. That's what most of the valves do. The next one we're going to look at is this error reporter valve. We've all seen these pages, the default stock, Tomcat error pages, when there isn't context or there isn't something. You give it a host header, and then it comes and displays that error page. So this is going to try and invoke the request, and if there was an error in that request, like the context wasn't available, or it blew up, and then everything else came to this point, this would catch that error, or see that error, and tell the response that there was an error. So that's where you're going to get that Tomcat 500 page that we're all familiar with, right? Reset the response, and then send the internal error, right? Which is what? Just straight 500? Yeah. So that's the error reporting. That's done by a valve. So if you want to customize that, you can customize your valve. If you want it to be a 503 versus a 500 flat one, that's where you can customize it right there. You can remove that one, you can insert your own valve. Super simple, lightweight. It has to be performed. Okay, the next one is this standard host valve. So keep in mind, we're kind of in Tomcat land in the Tomcat valves. This thing is going to do a couple of things. It's more involved. This is going to get the context that the request is available for, right? So if you deploy to the root context, root.org, right, or another context, it would get the associated context from Tomcat and make sure there is a valid context for the app for the request that you're making, right? So if there wasn't a context, then it would send this error, and then these strings are just kind of like a lookup value. It'll actually set the context loader and then invoke the request, and then move on. You're also going to catch errors here. If the context throws error when it's servicing this response, it's going to see the errors and mark them here. The next piece is the standard context valve. This one's a little more interesting. This is more involved. So the standard context. So this is where things like stripping out, accessing the webinf directory or metainf directory happens. So this is the level where it kicks you out. If you request /metainf/ whatever, this is the code right here that'll say, you can't deal with this. This isn't okay. Let's see. Metainf. There's some more coding here that does stuff like it wraps the response, and then it has some servlet request listeners. So you can hook up listeners in Tomcat to get events on new requests coming in, or you can set it up so this context can have events on it and that one doesn't, that type of thing. So my point with this whole presentation is just to expose us all to some of this cool stuff that's there by default under the hood. Because oftentimes I see that we try to reinvent the wheel 20 steps down the line when there's a mechanism already in your chain that you're not using. And I don't know this all. I just speak up if you see something or want to point out something that you think I missed. So this is a before event listener event, and then there's an after event listener after it invokes the request and moves on to the next.
I guess, Colin.
Yeah.
Is there an application server spec? I mean, is this Tomcat specific, or is there web server or other application servers? How much of this are we getting down into stuff that's specific to Tomcat versus what you can do in the other ones?
So we're not into the servlet spec stuff yet.
But the application server, is there a spec for the application server?
I'm not sure. This is Tomcat specific though, because we are definitely dealing with Tomcat valves. Okay. And it's a pluggable pipeline. I don't know if there's like a higher level.
I suppose there's no like an interface that this is implementing or anything like that.
Yeah, this is the standard context valve. Let's look at extends a valve base, which implements contained valve MB registration. So it would be somewhere in these valve. I assume valve is just an interface that you can implement.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Does anyone else know if there's?
That's the question, because the valves are Tomcat specific, but
Yeah.
application container, there are specs. That's the JEE spec.
Right.
That's not what he's asking about.
Right. At this level, yeah, I think you are. I don't think you're specific to like a certain API or G2E
Container.
container specs.